Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I am finally getting around to reviewing officially The Black Phone, the short story, the first film, as well as the newest entry, The Black Phone 2, that just came out in theaters. First, I want to talk about the book a little bit. So I went to go read The Black Phone because I've never seen the first film, and now with me being more into booktube and everything, I love Joe Hill. He is the one who wrote it, and my favorite book of all time is actually by Joe Hill. It's Horns. And so I was like, you know what, I'm going to pause the Stephen King journey I'm on and go read The Black Phone by Joe Hill. Little did I know that The Black Phone by Joe Hill is just a short story, and originally the book titled 20th Century Ghost. That's how it was originally published, but then obviously the film got made, and so they, repurposed it and everything to match the film. But it's really just a short story of a collection of 17 short stories, and is the seventh entry of this book of the novel of 20th Century Ghost. So we're going to talk about the short story first. It's only 20 pages long, so I was like, how are they going to make one film out of this, let alone two? My favorite quote from it is, "I'm not going to make you do anything you won't like." And that's actually by, in the film, he's known as the Grabber. But you know what? In the short story, he's just known as Albert. And he actually doesn't have the infamous mask or the name, the Grabber, in the short story. But basically, there's a man who is taking kids and ending their lives. Usually, at the age 12 is how old the kids are. And Finney, our protagonist, is actually 13 years old. So he thinks he's safe, and he's walking home one day when he sees a man who is struggling with a bunch of stuff in his van. And I like the change Joe Hill made, that he wanted to make it a clown, but there's a pretty infamous story about a pretty infamous clown by a pretty infamous author about a clown that abducts kids. And if you don't know, Joe Hill is actually Stephen King's son, and Stephen King wrote the book It, which I did read earlier this year. I will link that review also down below. And me reading that took me 3 months to read that whole book. But anyway, and I have my joke about Joe Hill. If you haven't heard it, since this is basically all about Joe Hill's creations, I will say it here. Usually I oversay it. I don't want to say too much. But do you know why he's called Joe Hill and not, he doesn't take the surname King? Well, I guess the truth of it is because he didn't want to just ride on the coats of his dad. But I like the original joke of, because if you put it together, it'd be Joe King. Joe King. Okay, anyway.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
But the book, the short story, I really liked it. There are differences in the first film to this. And basically, I'll talk about the first film paired with this. I watched it right after I finished reading the short story, and I did read the book in chronological order. I didn't skip any of the stories. But it stayed pretty true, especially the scene of when Finney, our protagonist, gets taken by the Grabber, Al. And in the films, we never learn his name, but in the short story, that's his name, is Al. And he's rather large, of a man. That's just how they describe him. But the scene where he abducts Finney, and that first scene of, "I'm not going to make you do anything you won't like," and they have that conversation, is beat for beat by the story, and I really enjoyed that. And I really liked the first film because it really just added more to the background of the story. They did change out Savannah's character. Now, I'm not sure if Savannah was related to Finney, but in the film, the first film, they made her character become Gwen. And basically, both characters can see where Finney is, and is the reason Finney gets found in the end. But they changed her name to Gwen for the films, and is now his sister. And that actress did so great. From the scene where the dad, who is a raging alcoholic, and we discover why later, he doesn't like how Gwen has these dreams and keeps trying to ask questions about them. And so he's very angry in that scene where he's using his belt, and oh, that was so difficult to watch. But her acting of complete sad and scared to angry and honestly pissed was just such a great moment in that film. And basically, the dad doesn't like her doing, following all her dreams and visions she's having, is because the mom had those same visions and dreams, and she ended up in an asylum and ending her timeline. And so he doesn't want the same for Gwen. So with the alcohol mixed with it, it comes off very aggressive. But I like his turnaround in the first film, because after they find Finn and he ends up being okay, the dad really appreciates his kids and becomes a loving father in the end. So as much as you didn't like to watch those scenes, or the dad's character, his arc is really great. And I did like, now we're going to start talking a little bit about the second film, because I did like how they took a part of the first film, a quote that he learned from his best friend that ended up getting taken and his life ended by the grabber. And he tells him in the beginning of the first film, he's beating up some kid, and Finn's like, did you really have to go that hard on him? Because after the kid's down, his friend is still beating on this kid. And he's like, did you really have to go that hard on him? And he's like, oh, it's mostly for sure. It's mostly for show. The more blood, the more entertainment, everything like that. And in the second film, Finney is now older, same with Gwen. They're both older, and Finney's basically being bullied for ending the life of the grabber, because he does in the first film. And everyone's kind of making fun of him for it. And so he's beating up this kid, supposedly for making fun of him, but we never saw that happen. He's just beating him up. And he kind of does the same thing. And Gwen is now the one going like, did you have to go so hard on him? And he's like, well, it's mostly for show. The more blood, the more entertainment. So I was like, hey, because I literally read the story, watched the first one, went and watched the second one. So to me, it's like, I think there was a part where the grabber, he doesn't say this exact line, but he said something alluding to it. He's like, oh, it feels like yesterday. And I'm like, hey, it was yesterday. For me, it was. Because I didn't wait years to see these back to back. But I liked the short story. I'm going to rate the short story a 4.5. I'm rating the first film probably a 4.3. It it wasn't as intriguing, but because I just read it, but I did like how they explored on the lore a bit more. Now let's talk about the Black Phone 2, where they kind of explain a little bit more, especially about the mom. So it turns out the mom didn't just end her timeline in the asylum, and they're adding that the grabber basically was part of her past as well, and he's the reason through visions that that's how she ended up ending her lifeline. But to everyone, it looked like she ended her own lifeline, but it was really the grabber. My issue with that is like, then why did the grabber wait till Finney was 13? If this is the bloodline, well, not blood, well, kind of like a bloodline thing. If it's gonna go down the family tree, that is kind of like bloodline, kind of like Final Destination bloodlines. Anyway, so kind of like how I'm saying they're copying from other films. Um, I just didn't like. Oh, his name is Jack Finney. I didn't even know he had a first name. Um, but basically, the second film, again, I was like, how are they going to turn 20 pages into a full length film, let alone two full length films? They're really going to stretch. My thought throughout the whole film of the second is this is a paper thin idea with just. They pulled this concept for the second film out of thin air, and the story is as thin as the air they pulled it. Because it pulls so much influence and kind of copy paste from Nightmare on Elm Street with Freddy Krueger. Why? Like, I understand pulling from influences, but this is like copy paste. And there's a reviewer out there, I'm not going to say his name because I do respect him and his opinion, and I understand to a point, but I just don't think he's realizing what he's saying out loud. The fact that we are so starved for a Nightmare on Elm Street film that for him, for this reviewer that I'm not naming, for him, this little appetizer of copy paste, not completely taking away any originality of what the grabber could be, and now making this a Timu version of Freddy Krueger, that's enough to suffice him until we get Friday the 13th film. For me, no. I'm not gonna settle. I'm not. I may be starved for a Friday the 13th film, but I can hold out until I get the main course and get like completely satisfied. Not just, I'm so starved that this BS paper thin plan is gonna, suffice. I'm not gonna settle for that. I'm annoyed because yes, had it been a Friday the 13th film and the ideas they were pulling from it was great, was epic to see. I'm not gonna lie, it was epic to see. It really was. I love the sequence when you could see the grabber when he comes out of the shadows, and then um and only Gwen can see him because it's in her vision. So to everyone else, she's just floating around, and it's like, oh, you are demonic. You are completely demonic. Like you're cursed, basically. That was interesting. And when she was about to be thrown in the oven, it was great to see, but it wasn't enough for me because instead of spending time making a Timu version of Freddy Krueger and giving this antagonist, absolutely ripping him off of any originality, why not just have put that effort into a Friday the 13th film? Like, yes, I'm starved for it too. I really want another Friday the 13th film. But I'm so starved for it that someone pretending it's like you're really wanting a steak and then someone just gives you like bologna. To say, oh, and some people are, especially with actual hunger and stuff. I get it. Like, if you are so starved, you're not going to be picky. Um, Beggars can't be choosers, but I am, and I can be, and I even can be with food too. Like, I will wait till I can get that. I would say filet mignon, but I really don't like meat. So, like, if I want sushi, the sushi bowl I always get, and someone just gives me like ramen noodles. They're like, oh, we don't have that sushi today, but we have ramen noodles instead. Oh, some people might be like, you know what? I'm so starved, and yeah, that just sounds great. I'll be like, no, I'll wait. I'll save up my money, and I will wait till I can get that sushi bowl because those flavors are what I'm wanting. I don't want a knockoff version of those flavors. That's just how I feel. I understand the reviewer who said that. I understand people who say that, but I saw absolutely no point in bringing the grabber back. I do understand that if the boys he ends their lives on are able to call on a phone and still talk even in the afterlife, I understand why can't the antagonist use that as a vessel to come back? That's a good idea. But that is a good idea. Gwen having visions and dreams is a great idea too. But to give clues, not, I don't know how to say it, just like not to completely, for him to become Freddy Krueger. It just, I think the only thing originality I liked about it is that he was able to harm some people, not kill them for some reason. Um, the only deaths in the second one is from the kids in the past. And of course, they're going to make a third one. He grabbed the mask on his way down into the ice. And now that he's knockoff Freddy Krueger, of course he can go into any dreams, and of course it's going to be, this one was, oh, these were the original kids that started off his killing spree. Well, the next one will be, now it's like CSI, and it's like the next one will be that one summer at Hideaway Camp when he ended those lives. Now Finney has to go figure out that story and mystery. But like, I'm not staying tuned for a third one, even if it comes out. I'm not gonna stay tuned for it. I liked the original concept Joe Hill had. I liked how they did justice to that story. They changed it enough to where he was a unique antagonist, and they added enough lore to stretch it out to a full movie. That was good. So the book, I'm gonna rate 4.5. The first film, I'm rating 4.3. Yeah, I'm rating The Black Phone 2 a 1 out of 5. Yeah, it was the worst film I've seen this year. You know how annoyed I was last year of, God, what was that stupid movie? I kept saying, there's no movie worse than this movie. Love Lies Bleeding, I think is what it was called. And then I finally found it, but like, that's the Black Phone 2 for me. I've finally counted down. I've watched 12 films so far this year. My next film I'm going to review right after this actually will be Shelby Oaks. I was so excited to see it. We'll talk about that next as a film. But before I talk about film, I'm going to be making my full book review of 20th Century Ghost. We're not really going to talk about the Black Phone in that, since I'm talking about it here. I'll just link it. But that's what's next, and I will see you guys for me in just a minute. But if you're not interested in the book of 20th Century Ghosts, please stay tuned for Shelby Oaks review. That will be next. And if you're interested in all the short stories of 20th Century Ghosts, because there are some stories in here I'm like, can we have a movie of that story? That was crazy. But if you're interested in that, stay tuned. It's coming right up. Thanks, guys. Please like, subscribe, and let me know what you thought of the Black Phone and the Black Phone 2. If you did like it and you hate me for saying that everyone just kind of settled for it, you could be angry. Let me know down below. That's fine. Just don't be crude, rude, and inappropriate. Be kind. And we're all allowed to have different opinions. And I can say again, I see where they put effort into that film. It's not, I'm not saying it was just dog shit. It just was unnecessary. That's all I'm saying. You can have a difference of opinion. That's fine. All right, guys. I will see you in just a second for the review of 20th Century Ghosts, the novel. All right, bye.